It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. Ha! It's Feedback Friday. A little bit of a different spin on Feedback Friday this week. You'll see why in a bit. But first, people really like the Showtune Patreon Jingles game. I think people like the kind of interactive component. People really liked the Defying Gravity riff, so I'm going to do that one again, because that seemed to be the most popular one this week. Perhaps the novelty, perhaps the fact that it's not the same every time, which is what people like, but I don't know. People really like this one. I'm going to try it again, slightly different words. I don't remember exactly the words I used the first time, and I don't have time to go back and look. Also, I can't stand looking at my own face. I know it's weird, but okay, here we go. I think you should become a Patreon, so why not try joining on Patreon, because your support is love. I think that was a little higher than the first time, but patreon.com/Lana K. And it was an interesting week in terms of commentary. The most surprising thing to me, and this is a reminder of people think in different ways, right, is the amount of pushback I got on the idea that people who criticize other people's work for a living should have a level of aptitude in the thing they're criticizing. Which is a strange thing to push back on, but that's the postmodern world we live in, I guess. Other people completely took the wrong way. The fact that I was jokingly comparing Goodreads scores, that was a joke, folks. But it was a joke in service of a very serious point of, if there's a ton of Dunning-Kruger going on in games commentary and games journalism, then we got a problem. Because as somebody who makes stuff, I just don't sit here and give my thoughts about other people's content. I make my own content. I did comedy for years. I still do on and off live shows. I create characters, I do creative stuff. Until you've done it, you have no idea how hard it is. And until you've done it successfully, you really have no idea how hard it is. Because, it's so difficult. It's so difficult to make a game, especially in current climates. Getting anything completed, quite frankly. That's why I try not to be too harsh on games, because usually just getting anything completed and out the door, that's an achievement in itself. Making something that is innovative, that isn't a hot mess, that people can actually like and connect to, that's a magical thing. And I really do stand by the fact that we are too quick to criticize stuff. Now, there are people that really stand by the idea that Hideo Kojima is a bad writer. I'd like to see you write something elegant in a language that is not your first language. I know people who can do it. And I know people who think Hideo Kojima is a hack writer. Now, part of that is, I think, the fact that things might be in English, but the structure is very Japanese in a lot of ways, which he comes by that honestly. Also, I think that there's an element of, we have no idea how he'd write something that isn't a video game, because he's never done something that isn't a video game yet, which is why I welcome, if anybody wants to try to make something, I don't think they should be discouraged from it by just, oh God, please no. Remember when they announced Heath Ledger as the Joker? Yep. There's been a lot of those. If you don't like Hideo Kojima's stuff, great. But unless you do have an area of demonstrable expertise in the area of writing, or at least writing criticism, then that's all you can really say. You don't like it. Saying something's good or bad, like being a writer is not the only thing that qualifies someone. If somebody's written really good commentary, I think Tom Bissell is a better commentator on games than a games writer. But at least he's doing it. So if he critiques something, at least he's done it. He's coming from a place of he has to be subject to the same criticism in his work, which, for the record, I do not like. I think having read his book and having played the games he's written, I don't think games are his medium. He's not writing for games. He's writing to write a great story in a game. And it's very different. A huge element of good games writing is finding inventive ways to convey information. And the challenging thing about video games and writing is that the writer on a game often has not, like when we think of somebody writes a book, right? They decide the major plot twists. They decide how the story is structured. That's a design director, a creative director, a narrative designer in a video game. A writer basically comes in and tries to make the decisions that have already been made palatable. You know, Hideo Kojima games are unique in that it is his vision, essentially from start to finish, though I really assume that somebody helped him very much with the translations. But, you know, if you want to say he's not the best writer in the world, that's you know, fair. If you want to say there's certain elements of his writing that could be stronger, yeah, everybody has that. But to just dismiss him overall as a bad writer, I don't think that's fair based on the explanations people have given, which is usually, like in the case of that Polygon article, really not very much evidence that he's an objectively bad writer. You know, some people say he's self-indulgent. And I guess my position on that is I wish I was more self-indulgent. I think you need an element of that as a creator to finish anything, and not get so consumed by doubt that you can't just let the work flow. But the people that got on me, for one, stating my own credentials, and two, objecting to the idea that someone who gets paid in any way to criticize other people needs an element of something that displays confidence in what they're talking about. This is very shocking to me. This is very bizarre to me. I don't think I will ever understand it. I don't think I want to. This is just one of those things where I have to accept that other people come at criticism in a way I don't. Ironically, they failed to persuade me. And let's face it, good writing is all about persuasion in some way, persuading you to see a point of view. Even if you don't get somebody to agree with your point of view, the fact that you were compelling enough that they gave you a chance, that's something. Persuading you to feel something, you know, persuading you to buy into something kind of ridiculous. This is the mark of good creativity, of good creative output. You move people. And so the fact that people insisting that there needs to be no merit involved when you are just announcing that someone is bad at something, there's no beginning to logic in that. I mean, why should that basically is a suggestion that postmodern criticism has no inherent value, because if you need no actual qualifications to do it, if there is no skill involved, then there is really no value to a professional opinion because everybody's opinion is equal. Well, that's not true. Everyone's right to express their opinions is equal. But all opinions are not equal. There are better thought out and less thought out opinions. I mean, on Twitch, we had a very, very funny back and forth. I enjoyed it anyway. I hope everybody else did. A very, very funny back and forth about the whole Mary Sue thing in Rey, with Rey in Star Wars. And, I was like, okay, prove to me that Rey is any more uniquely unqualified to do what she did than Luke Skywalker was. And, it became, no. It's not that Rey's skill level is implausible. We all agree with that. It's that, was it any more implausible than Luke Skywalker's in the first movie? That's a harder case to make, but I give people credit for at least attempting to do it. But that's what I try to do with a lot of my stuff. I try to challenge people's opinions. I try to challenge people's ways of thinking, because the only way you develop critical thinking is to practice critical thinking. And to me, whether I do not feel the need to persuade everyone. That's impossible. You create a very weak argument if you try to convince everyone. You can only convince the people who you have a hope of convincing. That's who you target, right? I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to say now. That's a skill. And if everybody's opinion is just equal, then it means that the people who do exceptionally well offering opinions, become very successful at it and very popular and get all these opportunities, that means that they didn't get further because they're better or people find their opinions more useful. It's just, luck or having the right friends. That may very well be the case in a lot of ways, but I don't think it should be. And I think there actually are metrics in which we can judge whether someone's opinion is worthwhile or not. And until we embrace those metrics, then we're treating gaming as an inherently worthless form of media. Because if there's no skill required, then there's no inherent value, like I said. And I don't agree with that. I think there is objectively ways of showing why something's not good or why something is good. And if you can't do that, and this is something I do myself a lot, is this bad or do I just not like this? And there's a huge difference. Like we were talking about 90s cartoons on Twitch yesterday, and I said I was too old by the time that show came out. Rugrats. I was too old to appreciate Rugrats. And that's not me saying Rugrats is a bad show. That's me saying I was too old to really be the target audience for that. And that separation, like, I'm not who it's for. Maybe this isn't my place to speak on this. You guys know that I don't like talking out my ass. I don't like just popping off on things I know absolutely nothing about. I think that does you a disservice. And this is where I said things are going to get a little bit different, because this week, I don't remember exactly when, but it was International Men's Day, which is, I think, a more controversial designation than it needs to be. And people asked me to do something for it, and I thought about it, and I decided it was probably better to just do stuff that was more in my wheelhouse, like the Hideo Kojima video, which one person said they were going to share. I'll read the exact comment. Gonna post this on a Metal Gear Solid subreddit because this is probably the first time I've ever seen any female gamer that really seems to understand Kojima's female characterization. Good job, they just discovered my channel. Yay, welcome, Salad and Nausicaa. I think that is because I'm older. The older you get as a woman, ladies, if you're like in your teens or 20s and you're like, oh my God, it's never going to be not awful. Trust me, it gets easier. It's amazing how much the world opens when there's no pressure to be cute anymore. And I still think I'm kind of cute in my own way. I'm kidding, obviously. I hate that I have to say I'm kidding with every joke, but the few times I don't, even when I do, people take it the wrong way. But when you don't have to be this thing, this type of person that is supposed to be somehow inherently beautiful, it takes a lot of pressure off. And you can figure out how to be other things because that thing isn't getting in the way. And I guess because I'm not, competitive with women in their 20s with like 3% body fat and butts you can bounce quarters off of, I can kind of look at that and go, good for you, enjoy it while it lasts. And I think we do live in a world that's too physical. But like I said, one of the things I like about Hideo Kojima is that he doesn't create these, conventionally, stereotypically pretty women. And it always makes me really happy when someone talks about the boss from Metal Gear 3 and says that her story just moved them to tears. Like, these are guys, right? They really connected with that woman. They said Quiet didn't do it the same way for them. And, that's very personal. That's not saying that Quiet's a bad character. They just don't have that connection. I found certain elements of Quiet's story, and I'm still not through it all, I admit, because I don't, the whole premise of Metal Gear is just not my thing. Again, nothing wrong with it, just not my thing. Death Stranding, I'm totally into. Metal Gear, not so much. I'm burned out on military stuff. But there's a lot of stuff with Quiet that I kind of relate to. And that men connecting to a female character is where I'm going with the International Men's Day tie-in. I didn't say anything because, quite honestly, I did not know what to say. And everything I could think of was a platitude. And I couldn't get a grip on it. And then my husband had some interactions on Twitter as his character, Ed the Sock. And he put up a thing for it, which I think is more appropriate. He's male. Like, even though it's a fictional character, it's a sock puppet. It's a male sock puppet. And, he talked about that, International Men's Day. There are still issues. There are still issues related to men being allowed to express more tender emotions, things like that. Mass incarceration, all that stuff. And a woman posted a thing of, a male tears meme. And he told her to knock it off, and he got it's a joke. But it's a cruel joke. Like, that's exactly the problem. That a lot of guys, when they try to talk about their feelings, get that. You shut up, quit your whining kind of thing. And that's exactly the problem they're complaining about. It's a real thing. And, when we get into a lot of the issues facing the world today, a lot of them are connected to this crisis of masculinity. I mean, all the writing on people who join hate groups, people who join terrorist organizations, they're all looking for a place, not even that they feel they belong even, I don't think anymore. I think it's just a place that they're not constantly being beat on and criticized and run down. A place that will let them in. And, you know, I think it's Kristen Piccolino that says, like, the hate groups were just the group that got to him when he was a lonely teenager. And if it had been a coach that got to him first, he would have gone with the coach. If it was, you know, like a church group, he would have gone with the church. He was just looking for belonging. And I think that's very real. And I think that's something that affects men differently than women because of the expectations on men. And see, I don't know where to go much farther with this, because I'm not a guy. And so in this case, I feel like it's just my role to listen and try to be aware and try to make sure I'm not unintentionally punishing the stuff I want to develop, which is I do believe very strongly that guys do need more social permission to discuss their feelings. Like Momo, right, Momo? Momo's sleeping. But Momo and Zelda are sleeping. Here we are. Momo. There they are. But I mean, and see, this is why I haven't done a video, because be a lot of silences and a lot of, it's not my story to tell. Like, I do a lot of stuff on women's stuff because I know that stuff. I feel comfortable talking about that stuff. I don't want to tell men what they should be. I don't want to tell men what they should aspire to. I don't want to tell guys, this is what you should be. I much prefer to just listen. And so what I've heard is a lot of, we just want to know what the rules are so we can play by them, instead of just being wrong somehow no matter what we do. And women have our own form of we're wrong no matter what we do. But that doesn't make the guy version of that any less valid, right? Take turns. I don't have a problem with there being a day to focus on men's issues. I mean, the discussion of suicide in, you know, men 50 plus, that's a serious thing. That's a real thing. You know, some of the stuff that might, hey, if we can keep a kid out of a hate group, out of like a white supremacist group, I actually prefer the term domestic terrorism than hate group. Personally, it identifies what it is. Hate group just sounds so much like the I Hate Cal news group from undergrads. Like it just sounds like such a weak term, to me. But if a little attention, if a little validation will keep a young man who isn't even really a man yet from going down that path, that seems like such an easy preventative. We spend all this time worrying about whether sexy video game characters are going to traumatize women because we're still horribly paternalistic regarding women. But boys actually need some paternaling. They need more paternaling. It's not fair to either gender. And I just don't, I mean, part of it I get. Part of it is that people are too worried about accusations to mentor teens now. Because, the whole, inappropriate behavior, I'll say, to avoid triggering anyone with teenage boys, close relationships with older men that are not their father. I get the concern there. There's got to be a happy medium, though. Like, there is something for boys that aren't athletically inclined. It's called video games, right? It's this stuff, what we do. And the fact that it's been so maligned and the fact that the dialogue on it is so negative. Like, could you imagine going to like a sports website? Deadspin is allegedly a sports website. And all they talk about is how awful sports is. I mean, I watch TSN when I watch Raptors games. Like, that's, I think it's TSN. I just go to the thing on my guide that says Raptors and push that. That I watch on my tablet. That's how I watch sports. That's how I watch my basketball. But like, no, they're not constantly talking about how awful and problematic basketball is. And that doesn't mean there aren't issues. I mean, after the Don Cherry thing, there's been a lot of discussions about some of the issues with hockey culture. But it's not all the time. And people aren't getting that sense of belonging from gaming because everything's so negative. And that is a huge part of my work. Like, I started talking about women's stuff because there was a need. There's a need to put things in their proper context, and analyze instead of criticize. And every time someone goes, wow, you're the only woman that gets it, there's a side of me that goes, I find it very hard to believe I'm the only one. I may be the only person able to elaborate on my thoughts coherently. But again, that goes back to, I believe in merit-based criticism. And I'm glad people have that. Like I said, I'm sure I'm not the only one. All those girls out there cosplaying quiet, they get it too, right? They get it. The boss is just not as well-known a character, unfortunately, because she's great. I do hope in some way this community gives you that sense of belonging, even though I can't give you the male role model elements of that. I know I'm gender nonconforming and I'm kind of an asshole and tend to fall into that kind of honorary guy slot. But I get that it's not the same as a guy, having an older guy help them figure out not how to be a man, because there's multiple ways to do that, but figure out how they want to be a man. And hopefully, like, I see some people kind of making connections and they talk to each other within chats on Twitch or within comments or on Patreon or stuff like that. And I just kind of let that happen because I think that's the best thing there. And not every guy feels an overwhelming need for male role models. Some people have other issues. They want somebody more female. They feel more comfortable, or that's the sort of nurturing they need for various reasons. And that's, this is why I don't like everything being obsessed with sex, because you can have very, very powerful platonic relationships that are extremely important. Mentorship should not be along rigid gender lines, because not everyone is heterosexual and not everyone is gender nonconforming. I never found it. I was fed more. My sense of self, I don't know why, has always been fed more by male role models. Maybe it's just bad luck. I had a few good female role models, but the ones that really made me feel I could do it happened to be guys, happened to be men, older men. And I think that's part of why I have sort of a different take on what it is to be a real man, because those guys were like math teachers, writing teachers, stuff like that. Not the sports jock or the manly man, the athletic type. Male nurturing is real, and men and boys need nurturing. And that's all I can really give. There's not an original idea in this, not a single one. And I know that, which is why I kind of avoided it. But people did ask, and there was that incident that I could kind of connect to and say, hey, woman to other women, that's not cool. Watch that. Our guys need our support. You don't have to be nice to every person on the planet. That's not even reasonable. But the people in your life, just make sure, and this goes for everybody, because I know I've been talking very much in a gender binary, and there's experiences outside of that. I mentioned the non-conforming stuff. But make sure you're not shoving away or accidentally beating down the people in your life that need you. And there's probably more people in your life that need you than you think. I get being broken often means you can't see things clearly. But it's not about seeing a lot of the time. It's about listening. And you're going to make mistakes. You're not always going to do the right thing. You're going to hurt people, even though you don't mean to, even though that's the last thing you want. But as long as you continue to try, and as long as you continue to be open, you're on the right track. Hopefully that gives something. I'm still trying to figure out how to get my arms around this stuff. And, the way I feel the best way I can do it is to do videos like I did on Hideo Kojima and, just get it. I guess that's all I can really do is get it as much as I can, and be prepared to take the slings and arrows that come with that, because it ain't popular right now. You know this. I don't have to tell you this. Okay, my throat's super sore. It's been giving me a hard time for the last 3 days now. Joy, ongoing problem. So I'm just going to do one bit. But I think you should become a Patreon. Okay, it's technically Patreon. I'm still working on it. Patreon.com/Leanna K. Patrons, send in your show tune suggestions with lyrics. If you're going to send me something, send it with lyrics. Okay, thanks for watching. Have a great weekend.